Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellie. Today's video is going to be my May reading wrap up. I set myself a goal this month. I have quite a few series that I own where I've read the first book and just neglected it even though I enjoyed the first book, and I've been really determined to finish these series and just get them off my TBR. So I did manage to do that with two this month. One, I managed to finish all of the books in the series that I own, and then the other one I managed to read 3 out of 5, so I'm pretty proud of that. But overall I did read quite a bit, so I'm gonna get into this so it's not too long of a video. The first book I read was on Kindle Unlimited, and that was called Winter, which is part of the Evermore Academy series, and that is by Audrey Gray. I apologise if I glance off to the side because I have my laptop here, and this month I was prepared and I wrote down notes on every book as I read it so that I wouldn't have a blank mind when I go to film. So Winter, this is book 1. I believe there are 4 books, each around a different season, but I could be wrong in that. I gave this a 4 out of 5, and I've read a lot of fantasy academy kind of stories, as you can see, and I've said many times I love Zodiac Academy, and I've read a few books that have given off similar vibes, but I've ended up DNFing them because the main characters sometimes can be just a bit annoying. But this one I actually liked the main character. In this one it's slightly different. So our heroine is called Summer. She is a human and she makes a mistake and she is taken across to like the fairy realm, where to make up for what she did she has to attend the Evermore Academy. I think it's like a university more than a school for the Seelie and Unseelie Fae courts. There are humans who are put into this academy and their job is to become like a shadow for the Fae. So a Fae gets to choose a human and they have to basically train to shadow them so that if they ever get into a battle they can protect them. And this was like a great setup to the series. It was your typical supernatural academy book with the mean girls and the hot guys, but I did really enjoy it overall and I will continue with the series. Then I read A Court of Thorns and Roses. This was actually a reread for me. I first read this in 2019 and didn't really enjoy it too much, but at that point I was pretty much only reading like young adult romance, so this was a bit different to read a fantasy. But since then fantasy romance has become my new favourite genre, so I really wanted to go back and give this series another try because it is so loved. And I did like this more the second time around. I did also listen to some of the dramatized audio as well as reading along. I tabbed a few bits of this. This was one of the series that I had on my TBR that I really wanted to get around to, so I read the first book and then throughout the month I then read the second and third books. And usually in my wrap-ups I do my books in order, but because this is all a series I'll talk about them all at once. So my favourite of the 3 that I read was definitely A Court of Mist and Fury. I tabbed this one quite a lot, whereas A Court of Wings and Ruin I didn't end up tabbing it at all. Although I think one of the reasons why I might not have enjoyed this one so much is 1, because it's so big, and 2, because I read the books back to back. I think it kind of put me in a bit of a slump, so I probably could have read the 4th book in May as well, but I decided to take a step back and I'm going to pick that one back up in June because I didn't want to overwhelm myself with this world and end up not enjoying it. I wouldn't go as far as saying I'm as big of a fan as a lot of people are, however I am really liking the series. I am excited to continue it. I don't think it's going to be a new favourite of mine, but I think it's definitely one I'm going to go back and reread again in the future. But I would say if you haven't read it yet and you haven't given in to the hype, I would say just give it a go. Then I read another ebook, and that was The Prince of Darkness by Isabel Lucero. I think that's how you say the author's name. This was an ARC copy. I gave this 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this one. This is a mafia romance between Vincent and Mariella, and I just found Vincent was like the perfect morally grey character. In this book she is working at one of the places he owns. So Vincent, he owns like a casino but has like a restaurant and things all in there, and she's working in the restaurant. She ends up seeing some things she shouldn't have seen, so for that he's then like, I either kill you or you have to do as I say and go along with this. So he ends up taking her back to his house. There were some secrets revealed within this that I was not expecting. This is also an age gap, and it was also a dual POV as well. If you are going to pick this one up, do check the trigger warnings before reading. But overall I just thought this was like a really perfectly executed mafia romance and I really liked it. Then I completed another series. Well, I say completed, I know there are a lot more books in this series than what I actually read, but I only owned 5, but I know there are like some novellas within this series, but I'm not gonna go back and read them. But that was the Shatter Me series. So I read Shatter Me in June last year and just never got around to picking up the rest of the series. But like I said, I wanted to kick some series off my TBR that had just been on there for so long. So I read Unravel Me, Ignite Me, Restore Me and Defy Me, and unfortunately I did not enjoy this series. I know this is like a young adult book, so I don't know if it's just because I wasn't the target audience I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I just did not like the main character of Juliet, and I just like couldn't get past that whilst I was reading through the stories. A lot of people I follow on Twitter love this series and really hype it up, and they're all team Warner, and I was reading it and I was just I could see why people love this character of Warner so much, but personally I just could not get past the fact I didn't like Juliet enough to enjoy the story. I found it confusing at points and some things would happen and it just didn't really make sense to me why it was happening. But again, this simply might just be because I'm not the target audience, and I'm kind of sad because I did really want to like this series because so many people do like it. But yeah, I ended up just not really enjoying it, and I no longer own the series, and I ended up reselling the 5 books I had on Vinted. But I'm glad I gave the series a go. I was tempted at some points just to DNF. I think after the 3rd book I was like, do I really want to continue? But I wanted to see how it was gonna go through. So yeah, kind of sad I didn't really enjoy it, but I'm glad I've done it now and at least they're off my shelves and I've got the space for all of these books. Then I read a novella by Elsie Silver, which is Out of the Gate. This is book 1.5 in the Gold Rush Rant series. I have not read any other books in that series, however I do own 2 of them. This is an age gap between Dermot and Ada, and what I can get through Goodreads is that Dermot and Ada, I believe, are the grandparents of the heroes or heroines that are in that series. So this was just like how they got together and how things started. Ada's family have a ranch and Dermot worked on this before I think he had like an inheritance and he got a farm elsewhere, so he moved away, and then he spent 3 years in the military and he has now come back to Ada's family ranch, and she has tried to put her crush away. She kissed him before he left and he pushed her away, but it turns out actually the entire time he was away he was thinking about her, but he didn't want to get involved because her parents had been so good to him. He didn't want them to think that he was taking advantage of them by making a move on their daughter, and this was really sweet. I think it was only like 130 pages or something, but I really liked it. Then I read another Kindle Unlimited book, and that was First Down by Grace Riley. I have seen this a lot on Instagram, and this is a college sports romance. I gave this a 3 out of 5. I don't know if I was just in a slumpy month, but a lot of my books were just kind of average reads this month. This is the story of James and Bex. They have classes together. James is on the football team and he has to retake some classes and he's struggling with them, so he asks Bex to tutor him, and at first she says no, but it turns out her ex-boyfriend is also on the team and he's not the nicest of people. So to try and get the ex-boyfriend off her back, she says to James, I will help you if you pretend to date me, so that the ex-boyfriend knows that she's moved on. And I don't know if it's just because I personally don't really like the fake dating trope, and I should probably just stop reading fake dating romance books because they always end up average for me, just because I don't like the trope, but they're always so hyped and I just want to give this trope another chance because I feel like there's going to be one I like. But I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy it that much. But I do think if you do like the fake dating trope, you would really like this. Then I read By the Book by Jasmine Guillory. This one, again, I believe this was another 3 stars. This was a cute romance between Isabel and Beau. Isabel works at a publishing house and she's been there for a while and she wants to progress her career, but she doesn't really know how to go about it with her manager, as they're not the most approachable of people, and the publishing house are kind of chasing Beau at the moment because he's supposed to have delivered a manuscript for his book, but he never sends it in when it's due, and they just get like a random vague email from him every so often just for him saying that he's working on it. So Isabel thinks a way that she can get into her manager's good books and to get her up the career ladder is if she goes out to Beau's house and sees him face to face to ask him, where's your manuscript? She does this, some things happen, and she ends up staying out there to help him write this book. Her manager agrees because it seems to be the only way they're ever going to get this book out of him. I absolutely love the cover of this one. Then I read another ebook on Kindle Unlimited, and that was Figure of Speech by Kasha Thompson. I think that's how you say the author's first name. I could be completely wrong. This again was another 3-star read. This was a friends to lovers romance between Clover and Theodore. So Theodore is the president of the United States and Clover gets a job as his press secretary, and because they know each other previously before he was president, she doesn't want people to think that she only got the job because of her connection to him. She's like very focused on her job. She's a very driven character, and Theodore tries to get her to spend time with him for them to go on dates, but she's like, I don't want anything to mess up my job and my future chances. This job's only temporary, and she has dreams of starting her own business and she just doesn't want anything to affect this, so she's quite hesitant against it. But I really enjoyed the relationship between the two characters as friends, and as it progressed it was just really enjoyable to read. Then I read Dance With Me by Kaylee Ryan. I don't know if this really counts because it was literally like a 32-page novella. Nothing really happened in this one. As I say, it was only 32 pages, so there's not really much time for much to happen, but we had two characters. But this was about Callum and Elena, and Elena had a crush on Callum. He has come back from college, I believe, and they are at this party. They're reunited and they admit they have feelings for each other. So I didn't give this book a rating because it was only 32 pages, so nothing that much happened. You didn't really get to see much into the characters or the author's writing styles, but I would like to check out more by this author. Then I read Stranded in Starlight Cove by Brighton Walsh. This was a brother's best friend romance. Again, this was another novella. It was 120 pages. It's a story of Drew and Clara. So Clara is stranded in Starlight Cove and she calls her brother's best friend Drew to see if he can come and pick her up and help her out, and there's a bit of miscommunication there and he ends up having to stay as they both end up stranded. Again, it was just okay. Maybe I'm in a slump. I do also want to read some more like full-length books from this author. Then I read my favourite book of the month, which was King by S.J. Tilley. I received an ARC copy of this one. This is a mafia romance. This is part of a series. Book one is Nero, which I have not read, and I wouldn't necessarily say you need to read that for this one to make sense, but there are references to Nero and his partner that he obviously gets with in the first book in this book. But this was the romance between King and Savannah, and King is definitely my new favourite morally great hero. I was really invested in their story. This is the third book that I've read now by S.J. Tilley, and I've absolutely loved all three of them, so I think this is definitely going to be a new auto-buy favourite author for me. I definitely want to get to Nero soon as well. Then I read X's and O's by Amy Lee. This is book 2 in a series, with the first one being Set on You. I will say I did enjoy Set on You a bit more, but this one follows Tara and Trevor. They're saying Tara. I think there's a scene in this where she says her name and she's like, it's Tara, but people pronounce it wrong, because I think Americans say Tara, but in the UK we say Tara. I'm not sure. I'm just going to say Tara because to me that's how you say it, but I think it might be Tara. In this one, they become roommates, and Tara decides that to find a boyfriend, she's going to go through a list of all of her exes, meet up with them, and see if she can rekindle anything with any of them, but also see why they cut off any relationships to see how she can improve herself, kind of thing. And Trevor decides to help her along with this. She also has a bookish social media. It's not mentioned which platform it is, but I think it was like Instagram, because she mentioned book stacks, but she would make little videos like Insta stories throughout this, which I really enjoyed, as I also make bookish content. And overall gave this 4 stars. I did like it. I think again it was just like a bit of a slumpy month that towards the end I was just getting a little bit bored with it, but I think that was completely on me and not the book. And again, it's another really gorgeous cover. Then I read To Love Jason Thorne and To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Mays. I did have both copies, but I ended up selling my copy of To Hate Adam Connor, which might give you a insight as to what I thought about that book. I actually ended up listening to the audio of both of these books because I was just trying to get through my TBR this month, and both of these books were included with the Audible subscription, so I thought I would take advantage of that and listen to those whilst I was reading through some other books on my TBR. So I definitely preferred To Love Jason Thorne. This is between Jason and Olive. Jason was Olive's brother's childhood best friend. He ends up moving away. At the start of the book is when when they're young and you see all of that happening, and then it jumps forward to the current day. But Olive is now an author, Jason is an actor, her book has become a bestseller and they are making it into a movie, and they want Jason to star as the main male character. This was another fake dating romance, and like I said earlier, I don't particularly enjoy that, but I did really like this book, so occasionally there is going to be one that I like, even though I'm not a huge fan of the trope. And then Tate Adam Connor, as I said, I did end up reselling that one as I didn't really enjoy it. Our characters Olive and Jason from this one are included in that one, and that one is about Olive's best friend Lucy and another actor called Adam Connor who moves in next door. He is a single dad who's going through a divorce. The main reason I didn't like this one is just because I didn't particularly like the character of Lucy. I didn't connect with her and I just found her a little bit annoying. And there was one thing that happened in this, I'm not going to say because it's kind of a spoiler, but happened and it did almost make me DNF the book, even though it happened at like 70%. It just felt so unnecessary and it wasn't needed, and I just had to kind of take a step back for a minute and just think really, and that just kind of made the book go downhill for me. I read The Hardest Fall last month and didn't like that, so I've not liked 2 and have liked 1. I still have Marriage for One, which I own, so I might try and get to that in June. I think that's a lot of people's favourite, so I'm really hoping I am gonna like that one. Then I read A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Miller Bain. This is another one that I'd seen popping up on BookTube over the years, and I found it in Forbidden Planet, and this one, unfortunately, I was kind of let down with. It wasn't what I thought it was. I thought this was going to be a lot more fantasy, but I think this might have been a historical, which I wasn't sure of. I've never read a historical romance, or maybe it was just the writing style, but it felt like what I would think a historical romance would be, if that makes sense. So this was the story of Maddox and Yvonne. Maddox's parents are killed and Yvonne was behind it or something. And they go on this journey, but like this journey, the whole book is like 500 and something pages, and it's just this one journey, and I was honestly kind of bored with it and I did want to DNF, but I got through it quite quickly. I was like, I'm just gonna sit and read it and not DNF it. Maybe I should have just done that. I think again it was totally my fault. It wasn't the book, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought there was going to be more fantasy. It's called A Gathering of Dragons series, so I thought there were going to be lots of dragons in it. This is in a series, but I'm probably not going to continue with it. Next I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This was a 5-star read and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I bought it a while ago based off the hype, and I'd been putting it off because it's quite a chunky book for romances. I don't tend to really enjoy really long romances, but this was not dragged out at all. I really like this one. The small town romance between Knox and Naomi. She comes to town and she actually has a twin sister who Knox mistakes her for, so they get off on the wrong foot, and Naomi then finds out that her sister has a daughter who she's left behind, and Naomi then has to take on this niece along with moving with a small town and dealing with what happened from where she had come from. And really like the small town romance setting of this. It was really easy to visualize. I didn't get bored at any point, and I honestly don't know why I put this off for so long. I was reading some Goodreads reviews and saw that this was very mixed, but I personally do see the hype with this one. I really loved it. I have the second book, which I'm not gonna leave too long to get to. Sorry if the angle changed, my phone just fell over, but I have 2 more books to talk about. So then I read New Moon by JJ King. I read this on Kindle. I believe this was on Kindle Unlimited, or I might have purchased it for free on Amazon. This is a wolf shifter romance based around a wolf shifter academy. It's like elite academy. Again, they were like university age. I think the heroine was 22. This had a lot more action in it compared to other shifter books and supernatural academy books that I have read. It's part of a series. It was a great start to the series and I probably will continue with this as well. And then the final book I read was Protecting Her Honor by CC Monroe. This was on Kindle Unlimited. Our hero in this was a very possessive hero, which I don't mind, but I didn't particularly like it in this instance. He was a little too much for me, but if you like a possessive hero, I would definitely recommend this book to you. They were childhood friends. He admitted he loved her, I think, when they were 18, but she was pregnant with another guy's baby, so for the sake of her children, she stayed with the guy that had gotten her pregnant with, that she was dating at the time, even though she didn't particularly love him. But now she is back. She's a single mum going through a divorce, and our hero. I can't remember their names, even though I literally finished reading this yesterday, but he is now a cop. She's in a custody battle and he is trying to help her out with that. And as I say, he was just a very possessive, protective hero, which isn't a bad thing, but I just didn't particularly like him as a character. So they were all of the books which I read in May. I'm glad I managed to tick off some books that had been on my TBR for quite some time, and hopefully June is going to be just as successful. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next week.